Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. Thank you so much for joining our second day of the Caring Conference, our Resilient Spirit. Good to see everybody on a Saturday morning. I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation about resilience. And just a reminder, if you're here for CEUs, there's a link in the chat room that you can click to pay the $20 and then to complete the evaluation form. I just ask that you do that after your last workshop. In addition, I've posted links to our art show and our word show, so feel free to contribute to our word show. Hopefully you found some words to describe your resilience during your time with us. Okay, so let's get started. Today I'm going to talk about our best selves. Oh my gosh. Oh. I think sometimes it feels like the challenge to be our best is just a daily, sometimes minute by minute challenge. And I finally decided to look at it this way, that I want to be at my best because we're going to encounter others at their worst. So I want to be ready when others are at their worst to remain my best. I don't want to meet their worst with my worst. I used to think to myself, I'm going to say this in a nice way, that I don't want to apologize to a jerk, meaning I don't want to be the jerk, that ex-jerky to a jerk, and then I have to go apologize to a jerk. And I really thought about that in my situation with my oldest sister, who I talked about yesterday. I always wanted to be at my best with her so that when an encounter ended, I didn't have to think, oh, darn it, I have to apologize to her because I acted so badly. So for instance, we used to live in the same suburb, my parents, myself, and my older sister. And at one time, my older sister and one of her daughters, my parents and one of her other daughters, and I were at the same restaurant for lunch at the same time without knowing that we were going to see each other at the same restaurant. So I just went over and gave her a big hug. Good to see you. How funny is this? Did you see mom and dad? They're over there. And so at the restaurant, we all pretended that we were one big happy family. And it worked because I was there with a work colleague who said to me, oh my gosh, that's so great. Your family. You're all so loving with each other. I thought, okay, we were at our best during a situation that could have brought the worst out. Of course, that was only a few minutes. And I think also our timing of how long to be at our best during a worst encounter is important to keep in mind too. So there's different circumstances and situations in which we'll encounter the worst in others. At work, out in the community, within our family, and within our systems. So for those of you who are caring for a family member or working within the system, you'll know what I mean. Sometimes the system is at its best and sometimes it's at its worst, and we encounter both. Okay, so we're really looking not to bring out the worst in ourselves when we encounter the worst in others. So I'd love for you guys to share. When have you felt like, oh my gosh, I was just at my worst at home? Or, oh my gosh, I was just at my worst at Target? Or, what happened to me at work today? Oh my gosh, everybody experienced the worst side of me. So I think about my other sister who I talked about yesterday. She has the triplets. And after the triplets were born, if you could imagine what her life was like, it was really kind of overwhelming for her. And the triplets were all normal birth weight. They were 6'9", 5'9", and 5'1" in terms of their weight. So they all went home after 3 days in the hospital, which she was not prepared for. She thought she'd have a little time to adjust. So they all went home, and then she had to figure out how to take care of them, 24/7. And it really took its toll on her. We were all there for her. We did as much as we could, as often as we could. And when it came time for them to be baptized, she was planning a party. She went to pick up the cake and it was not the cake that she wanted. And she literally had a fit at the store. And then later she was like, oh my gosh, what happened to me at that store? But there's always that one thing, right, that kicks over the dominoes. And then it feels like I've just spread my bad day to everyone and I can't get it back. I don't know how to stop the spread and I don't know how to get the spread back. And it happens to all of us. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that we're at our worst sometimes too, which can help us be compassionate, fingers crossed, when we encounter others who are at their worst too. Okay, so Barbara's sharing in the chat room, when she feels overwhelmed or tired, she has less patience. Absolutely. We have to take care of patience. And patience does require that we are well rested, that we have had good food, and that we are really in a place where we feel like we have enough. I think patience is about maintaining enough. And when we don't have enough, it's hard to stay patient. And I think about that in our life too. If we feel like our life isn't giving us enough, we become impatient with our life. So we can be impatient with people, with situations, and with our life. And then Jody is sharing exhaustion, fear. Oh my gosh, when you're not getting all the information to make a decision. Yeah, and that's so frustrating too when you are asking the good questions. When you are talking to people who can give you the information, it feels like you're still, sometimes honestly, it just feels like you're begging for the information. That just feels like a terrible position to be in. And Deb is sharing, when someone is condescending or demeaning to me. Yes. Yep. Yep. So true. So true. Okay. And Elizabeth is sharing, can relate to length of time when around someone who is consistent and tough to be around. When it's too long with these people, I snap and usually a fight happens. Absolutely. I mean, I think we all have to be aware of this. And it can be so helpful to know, oh my gosh, okay, the time is up. So I shared yesterday in my presentation about being with my parents on Thursday, and my mom was not in a good mood. So I did the exit strategy because I knew if I stayed any longer, it was just going to get worse. So I know that there's a time limit for certain situations, certain relationships. Yeah, and I think Marilyn is sharing too that, we do have people in our life that know how to push our buttons. And sometimes they like to really get a workout because it feels powerful if you know you can get a rise out of someone. So my older sister is really great at doing that. She knows how to get a rise out of people, and it really is something that brings a sense of power to her. Okay, so we know when we're at our worst. What are your experiences with your family members and your coworkers and your systems that you work within or work through? When are they at their worst? Sometimes it seems like the system is not at its best when it has to pivot and pivot quickly. So I think about the pandemic. The hospital systems, the long-term care facilities had to pivot overnight, right? So they stopped visitation. And that really put family members in a terrible situation. In October, my father was hospitalized, and our hospitals were opening up to two visitors. You had to designate two visitors, the same visitors. You couldn't switch out, you couldn't do a tag team. He was hospitalized on Monday. On Friday, it was discharge day. I went to check in as I had done the other days. I had my temperature check. I gave them the room of my father and his name. They called up to the nurse's station and they said, she's not in in her room. So I said, well, my father is a he, and this is his discharge day, so he should be in his room. Can you call back? Called back, talked to the same nurse. Nope, she is not in her room. You cannot come up to the room. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to get the discharge organized. I'm just trying to get him home. That's all. So I had to go wait somewhere. And then finally, I just thought, why don't I wait in the lobby of his patient floor and then figure out what I can do there. And then sure enough, it was just this huge misunderstanding. And apparently it was someone that was having a bad day because my dad's roommate and his family had the same experience. They weren't allowed to come up to the room. So I think sometimes the system trying to pivot is at its worst because it's trying to roll out a new policy and have everybody on board with this new policy. And that is difficult, sometimes feeling almost impossible to do. So others are sharing in the chat room. So Marilyn's sharing coworkers when they feel overwhelmed and not appreciated. Yes, absolutely. We need to feel appreciated. And Elizabeth is sharing, when I took too much on at work while caregiving and raising kids. I felt like I wasn't doing enough for everyone, right? This whole, oh my gosh, guilt around what am I causing others to sacrifice? And we just feel terrible about that. So I love Adam Grant, and I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with his work. He has 3 books. I think the 4th book is out. And I actually mentioned his 4th book yesterday. It's about thinking. We have to challenge ourselves around the assumptions and the beliefs and what we believe to be true on a regular basis in order to stay really current in our life. He wrote a book a few years ago called Give and Take. And so he describes 3 categories of individuals that we might encounter. So the givers are people who just give. There's no strings attached. They just feel like this is a good thing to do. I'm going to give to you. And then the opposite of the givers are the takers. So they want to get as much as they can. So they literally are driven by getting as much as they can. And then there are matchers. And so what they do is they give and take, and they try to trade evenly. In your experience, who do you usually encounter? A giver, a taker, or a matcher? So I used to host a national caregiving conference, and I hosted it for 4 years. And it was an immersion into the world of takers. Now I can say it was fascinating because I'm a year and a half out from my last one, but at the time it was not fascinating. It was anyway. So I started really trying to figure out, what am I going to do about all these people who are just taking from me? Every day I would be inundated with requests for people to take from me. And when I would try to explain to people, I am just so exhausted from people taking from me, I would get, well, you need to set boundaries. Well, you need to do this. You just need to say no. Just set the straight line and tell them you can't do anything other than that. And I thought, I am doing that. You just don't understand the volume of takers I am exposed to. It was the volume that was getting me. It wasn't that I didn't have strategies to say no or set boundaries. It was that it was every day. People would want more and more and more from me every day. It was exhausting. So I revisited Adam Grant's work. And what he did after he wrote the book was start to really rethink these categories. And what he learned is that if you are a giver in a circle of takers, the givers aren't going to influence the takers to become matchers. The giver is going to burn out and the takers are going to continue to take. So the takers are just going to take, and the giver is just going to become toast. And I think that's so important for us to remember, that we can be givers and matchers. And that if you see that you are surrounded by people who are taking from you, you can ask for a match. So if someone, for instance, reaches out to you and you're like, I don't really know this much about this person. Let's see what I can find out. If they make a request, you can say, yeah, I can do that for you. And I'd love for you to do this for me in return. And if they just say no, you know you have a taker. So I started doing that actually with the conference. I had this one individual who I was really working with for him to become more involved in the conference. And so he was asking me to do things for him. And he had a really interesting business model. So I was starting to get involved just in learning more about his business model and giving him suggestions. And then I had invited him to the conference and he was like, I don't think I could come. So to me, I think, okay, you're not valuing my work. So then the next summer, he reached out again and he said, hey, will you do this for me? And so I wrote back and I said, I can't. because these are my priorities. And I listed my 3 priorities. And I said, if you fall into one of those priorities, I can continue a conversation with you, but these are my priorities right now because I have another conference coming up. And I never heard anything from him again because he is a taker. He's not interested in giving and taking, he's just interested in taking. And it was so helpful for me to figure out, okay, what are my priorities right now? So that if someone asks me for something, I can come back with, okay, I just want to let you know these are my priorities. If you fall in one of my priorities, yeah, let's continue the conversation. If not, I have to really focus on my priorities. Good luck to you. Okay. So I just found this really helpful to remember that we can still be givers and protect ourselves, knowing that if you are surrounded by takers, you are not going to influence the takers to become anything other than takers. And in order for you as a giver to continue, you have to really distance yourself from takers because they're always just going to take from you. Yeah, so Barbara is saying they are energy vampires. And it's so true. I would say about the conference, I would say, honestly, these people are sucking the life out of me. And what was interesting is my body really started rebelling. So at the 3rd conference, I had worked to such an extent that I kind of destroyed the muscles in my biceps. I know that sounds so bizarre, but just typing. And then I was in a car accident and it really exacerbated the injury to the extent that I could not lift my arm. I could not lift my arm and I could not lift my arm for months. And then my back went out because of the stress. And then the next year, I was sick with the flu. So by the 4th year, I thought, okay, my body is telling me this is not a good situation for you to be in. I totally believed in this conference because it was all family caregivers and former family caregivers who were presenters. That was very unusual. Every time I went to a conference, it was always someone who had researched caregiving but not been in a caregiving experience, or who had been a doctor but not been in a caregiving experience, telling us what it was like to be in a caregiving experience. And I thought, but unless you're in that caregiving experience, I'm not sure you're really an expert in what it's like to be a family caregiver. So I really wanted to put family caregivers and former family caregivers on stage and really give them the spotlight and have their stories be the voice. And I thought everybody else would get behind this idea. And it was not the case. It was just fascinating to me. Now I can say it. It wasn't fascinating at the time, but it's fascinating to me to think about it. And it makes me think about how to position my work going forward. What's my advocacy? How do I present ideas to get people to buy in and become at least matchers? I should say too that I did have some amazing givers who did come and help out. So it wasn't all takers, there were some givers. And I send those givers thank you notes on a regular basis. Actually, we did a love letter challenge in our Caring Our Way website as part of the Resilience Project. So I posted a prompt every day in February to share a love letter. And I gave a situation or a relationship just to help you feel like, okay, I do have someone I can send a love letter to, because sometimes it was just a thank you note. And I sent love letters to those givers who helped with the conference to let them know I think about them every day and I'm so grateful that they gave so much. Okay, so let's think about how do we stay our best? So for me, it's helpful to define what it means. Let's define what our best is. So Barbara, you were talking about patient before. I find that I feel like I'm at my best when I'm patient. And I like to be composed and concise. And if I feel appreciated, I feel like I'm at my best too. And I'm focused. And what I mean by protect, if I protect what's important to me, and that's priorities and values and time, I'm a big protector of my time. I don't like to waste time. I really like to be productive and useful with my time. And then I think it's all about feeling nurtured, right? We want to feel like life is nurturing us, our day is nurturing us, our relationships are nurturing us. And someone had talked earlier about a takeaway from yesterday's workshops about that we're not alone. And I think about feeling connected as important to being at our best. When we feel alone in our situation or our circumstances, our day, I think it's hard to be at our best because it's really such a lonely experience. I think we need to feel like, even though no one's with me at this moment, I'm connected to support. So I had an experience in 2015 where my mom was critically ill. We were working through some health issues with my dad. He had skin cancer on the top of his head. He went to get some of the skin cancer removed, refused pain meds. Now, I was not with him when he did this. My brother was with him because I was working. I could not be with them. I was living with my parents at the time. And when my brother said, Dad refused pain meds, I thought, oh my gosh, we are in for something. Well, sure enough, midnight, thud. I run down the stairs and there's my dad on the stairs. He has passed out. So I call the EMTs. They come, they take his blood pressure. It's like 60/40 or something just horrendous. And he, of course, says, I'm fine. I don't need to go to the hospital. Well, so he goes to the hospital. I'm in the emergency room lobby. It's 12:30 at night. It's the same hospital for both my parents. So my mom is in one area, my dad is in the emergency room in another area, and I'm in the lobby by myself, but I thought I am not alone here. So I sent a text to my siblings who I know are not awake, but I know that just reaching out to them means I'm connected to them. So I send them a text. This is what happened. Of course, they text me as soon as they get up the next morning, but just being able to do that made me feel connected. I think that's part of being our best. I managed an online community for family caregivers for about 24 years. And we used to do what we called wait buddies. You could be a volunteer to be a wait buddy, and you could ask for a wait buddy. And it was when you knew you were going to have a wait. And typically it was waiting for a surgery. So if any of you have experienced what it's like when someone's in surgery, you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's very lonely to feel like you're waiting. So you would have a wait buddy who would send text messages to you and check in and see how you were doing so that you weren't waiting alone. It was really a powerful program. I had a wait buddy during my dad's surgery. Actually, everybody volunteered to be my wait buddy. It was really very sweet. So I think there's ways that we can be connected to feel alone, even when we literally are by ourselves. Okay, so I love that you guys have been sharing what your definition of your best is. And so continue to share those in the chat room. And Felicia, thanks for coming back, Felicia. It's good to see you. Is saying focused and knowledgeable. Oh my gosh. Yes, I love that word knowledgeable. And you know what else that makes me think? I need to know what I don't know. So if I don't know, I have to be open to asking for what I need to know. Okay, so I'd love for you to continue to share your insights. So Elizabeth is sharing that she has weight buddies, which are WEIGHT buddies. And we had weight buddies, WAIT. And she's saying that she likes that WAIT buddy. And it was, we are, oh my gosh, weight stood for something. I'll have to think of what it was. We are in touch. I think it was. We are in touch. You could get a wait buddy for any time that you were going to wait. If you were waiting for results, if you were waiting for surgery, if you were waiting in the doctor's office, you could get a wait buddy. Yeah, Marilyn, maybe we should think about resurrecting it again. I'll reach out to everybody to see if that's of interest. And I think it because sometimes when you're caring for a family member, you do feel like it's just you. And it is nice to be connected to someone who gets it, that it's you, that you're the one. That even if there is siblings that help out, it might be that you're the one that knows the most. You're the one that gets it. You're the one that feels it. Okay, so Barbara's sharing her definition and she writes, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. Patient, focused, productive, and energized. When I'm at my best, I am a source of light. When I am at my best, I am a source of light. Oh, I love that. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Okay. So I'm curious, what do you think universally Everyone needs to be at their best. So Jessica's writing, when I'm at my best, I'm in the moment. Yeah, we talked a lot about being in the moment yesterday during our workshops, that the moment is where our power is. Yeah, absolutely. And Katie is sharing, tune into my heart space. Yeah, I love that. Katie, did you get your sixth person? So I think about universally, okay, it's coming. It's coming. You'll have to let us know when the sixth person comes in. So I think about universally, if we understand that others need just like we do, it can help us to be compassionate. So I think about my mom. Now, when I saw her on Thursday, she probably was hungry. She had an unmet need, which is she was hungry, and she is not able to be hungry and kind at the same time. It's just not within her wheelhouse. So universally, I think there are needs that we all have to have met in order for us to be at our best. And I think about maybe it's we all need to feel loved. We all need to feel supported. We all need to feel appreciated. What else would you guys add to that in order for all of us to be at our best? And I'll add too, I think we all have to feel like we have a voice, that we have an opportunity to share an insight, to offer an idea. Yes, to have a purpose. So Felicia just wrote in there, yes, we all need to have that purpose. Yeah, Barbara's writing, we all need to be seen and heard. Absolutely, absolutely. And Raina is suggesting that it's rested, heard, and valued. Yeah, I love that. Right to it. Yeah, and Deb is sharing, I am not at my best when I am tired and stressed. Absolutely. So here's what's so interesting about the interactions we have with people. We have an interaction in the moment, but we don't know what their previous moment was like or their previous day. So people show up and we think, okay, they're at their best when really they might be hungry, they might be tired, they might just have heard really devastating news and they are showing up because they have to. So we don't know the moments that lead up to the moment we encounter them. And I try to remember that. That is not necessarily what I do, but I try to remember that. I don't know what they just experienced. I don't know what they are trying to cope with. So let's think about the strategy that we can use to stay our best when interacting with others who may be at their worst. You know what? I want to ask you guys, how do you know when someone's at their worst? What might be the signs that someone is not at their best? Okay, so Katie is sharing emotional, not rational. Absolutely. Agitated? Yep. Barbara sharing agitated? Yes, absolutely. Crying or angry? Yes, absolutely. Elizabeth is sharing that? Yes. So I do think we show, oh, and acting out. Deb is sharing acting out. And I will also say that sometimes, now this is, I want to, I'm going to say this and then try to figure out in a way to say it with compassion. But there were times when I showed up in a situation and I didn't look my best. So I love that you guys are talking about how we express ourselves with emotions to show that we are at our worst. And sometimes when I would show up, emotionally, I would seem to be okay, but I did not look good. So my hair might have been a mess, or I would have had the big bags under my eyes, or I would have looked like I just put something on. Oh, Elizabeth, acne, absolutely. We break out with stress, right? So I think we also can, and I don't want us to make a judgment about how someone looks, right? Because we are all doing our best in terms of how we present ourselves. But for me, sometimes I show myself at my worst by how I look. So I want to be compassionate about that. And for me, it was weight gain. So I showed up at my worst gaining weight. And what people would say to me is, you're not taking care of yourself. you should follow your own advice. And I thought, well, that's not advice I give to people. But anyway, it's this whole default to, when you're a family caregiver, you don't take care of yourself. And I really believe that is not true. We are taking care of ourselves because self-care during caregiving is much different than it is outside of a caregiving experience. Yes, and so Barbara sharing your appearance can be a subtle indicator of what's going on inside. And Marilyn is sharing no energy to do self-care. Absolutely. Our stress keeps weight on. That's just the reality of it. We're doing the best that we can, and we are under stressful situations, and that can impact our appearance, regardless of how well we're taking care of ourselves. Yeah, Felicia's writing that she has GERD flare-ups. Yeah, absolutely. So our body shows signs when we're not at our best. So the emotions, our look, and then you guys are also talking about the words that we use, the language. Sometimes we might use the wrong words because we might not have the bandwidth to say the right words. Yeah, okay. So here's what I try to keep in mind. It's not personal. So there's a great book called The Four Agreements. Have you guys read that by Don Miguel Ruiz? He talks about the 4 agreements that we can make with anybody that we encounter. And one of the agreements that we have is that it's not personal. Because if we think about it, we're encountering someone in a moment, we don't know about the moments they just had. So their experience with us might be in reaction to what they just experienced. It might not be about us. The other thing that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about is the fact that everybody has wounds, and we may unintentionally touch someone's wounds, and then they react from that. We can also communicate clearly. So I like to be composed and concise because that helps me avoid, as much as possible, miscommunications and misunderstandings. I also think that we can always advocate effectively. And again, sometimes that means that right now, this is what I need for myself, for my caree, for my kids, for my work. And then we can say, this is what I need right now. I'll let you know when I need something different. That's being effective and advocating. We can always give ourselves time. Sometimes the system will say, you need to tell me right now. And you could say, I totally know that you need to know as soon as possible. I need to take an hour or two to think about it, and then I'll let you know. We can revisit the situation when we give ourselves time. So Katie is sharing in the chat room that it happens with her mom. She has lots of old wounds that really trigger her, and she takes it out on me. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's so hard in our family system. So my dad, he would take it out on us when we were kids because his wound was his father had left when he was 7. He and his brother and his mother went to a family event, and when they got home, there was a letter from his dad, and he never saw his dad again. He was very angry, understandably so, and had really never addressed that anger. So he was just a man of rage. And so when we were growing up, it was all, avoiding dad because you just didn't want to be that target. And I think what's so interesting is that he did raise children who are very compassionate about him. Except for my older sister, the 4 of us are involved in helping my parents. And my other 3 siblings do not complain about it. And they are very open and accepting of it when I complain about it, because I'm the one that spends the most time with them. And sometimes the anger comes out, and my mom, I'm still trying to figure out my mom. But anyway, when she acts out, I will say to my siblings, oh my gosh. And they all say, yeah, I get it. It's just nice to be able to say that. Yeah, and Marilyn is sharing they often take it out on the one they feel safest with, right? The one who will always love them. What a gift it is to give someone of love. So I remember watching Dr. Phil one time, and he was talking about his family members who really challenge him. And he said, the way I get through these challenges is just to love them through it. But what a beautiful way to look at it. We're just loving our family members through their difficult moments. Okay, so when I look back on managing and hosting that conference. I wish I would have figured this out then, but I figured it out afterwards because I really reflected on what could I have done differently? How could I have communicated better with the givers? How could I have minimized the givers and maximized, I mean, how could I have minimized the takers and maximized the givers and the matchers? What could I have done differently? I thought, what if there's a strategy called wow? So, first of all, just saying wow changes your stress. So, if you're in a stressful encounter with someone and you remember, oh, wow, I can manage this, it causes a little bit of a pivot in your energy level and in your confidence. Wow, I have a strategy for this. I'm encountering someone at their worst. I'm going to stay at my best because, wow, I have a strategy. So it's words, option, wisdom. Okay, so here's words. No surprise, but I have found that I often forget to use my words. So I'm always reminding myself, communicate, use your words. It sounds so basic, but in the moment when you're caught off guard by someone who's at their worst, you just are just sometimes tongue-tied. Oh my gosh, what do I say? What do I do? Okay, so it's words that are asking for time, asking for a break, asking for more information, asking for ideas, asking to include another viewpoint. And I have found if I start with a question, I am buying myself time. In our certified caregiving consultant training, we really learn how to ask those open-ended questions. You move into clarifying questions when you want to get closer to an agreement, but in that conversation, when you ask those open-ended questions, what, how, when, who, where, it opens up the conversation. And I think one of the great questions we can ask starts with, what if? Because then it opens up possibilities. What if we table the conversation for just about 2 days and have another conference call on Friday? Okay, yeah, we can do that. What if? What if we just got some more information? Because I just don't feel like we know enough to make the decision. What if we spent a few moments just brainstorming to see what we can come up with? What if we ask the doctor for a conference call? So I'd love for you to share. Oh, you know what? And then a couple more, and then I'm going to ask you for your words. Okay, so we could say yes. Yeah, absolutely. I can do that when there is a request that can come in. We could say, you know what? Maybe I'll think about it. We can say, if I do this for you, then will you? So if then, and you can say no. So I talked about Dr. Phil. For those of you who are from Chicago, you'll remember Phil Donahue, who was this great talk show host. And he broadcast from Chicago, and we just all loved him. And I remember watching his show one day, and he talked about a family rule they had, which is never explain, never complain. So if you say no, you don't have to go into this lengthy explanation about why you're saying no. You could just say no. In addition, if you can focus on not complaining, which is a struggle for me, I am constantly working on this, you don't fall into the drama, which a complaint and a complaining situation will create. I think drama is something that really steals our time, and it's very addictive. So we can get caught up in drama without meaning to get caught up in drama. So we can just say no. And then remember, I can say no, I don't have to explain. The other thing is you don't have to explain, and you don't have to wait for someone to approve your no. Sometimes we wait for that stamp of approval. Is it okay if I say no? It doesn't matter. Say no. I can't do that. Thanks for asking. Okay, so which words work for you? I'd love for you to share any words that you use in the chat room. Deb has a great insight about givers. Yes, we have a hard time saying no without explaining, right? Because we're just very empathetic, compassionate people. We know what it's like to receive no's, right? So we're trying to, dull the sharp no with a, here's why. So Elizabeth is writing, we'll see. And it buys her time to decide. And I think it's important, Deb, when you think about the givers having a hard time saying no, we can say no and give thanks for the request. And that can help us feel better. I can't, I wish I could. Thank you so much for that offer. We've been talking about this really over the past day and a half so far. It's really giving ourselves options within resilience. So the O is for options. So words, options. Those are the first two letters of wow. We can take a breath. Oh, yeah. Oh, Terry, that's a great way to use words and options at the same time, right? I need a moment to breathe through this, right? Yes. I need a moment to collect myself. Yeah. We can take a break. We can take time. We can take an idea into consideration. Yeah. Let me think about that. That could work. I just want to think through it. And we can take a request to another person. So what are the options that work for you? I think movement as an option is really important too. We had talked about this yesterday, this idea that action can help us. So we can say, I need to take a walk and then I'll get back to you. Yeah, Barbara sharing breaks. I need to step back and have a moment to process. Absolutely. I think what's so helpful to remember is the options give us time to process. And for everyone, we have a different way to process. And so those options can be different for us regarding the situation, the relationship, the environment. Oh, Jody is sharing. Yes, I love this. If you're coming to me with a complaint, come to me with at least one solution. I love that. I love that. And Elizabeth is sharing that writing helps her process. Yeah. And Katie likes to move. Exit, breathe, process. Yeah. Okay. So we all have wisdom. And I think the best place, one of the best places to use wisdom is these encounters with people at their worst. So words, options, wisdom. Wow. And I think we can use truth within wisdom. So what do you know to be true? What do you know could be true? What could be true for another? And then how can you facilitate a truthful discussion? What could be true for another puts you in a place of being open to hearing the truth someone else lives in. I just like to remember what's the truth for someone else, what's the truth for me, what's a really helpful conversation about both truths. So I'd love to know what's your wisdom. And Jessica is sharing in the chat room that she's learned not to respond right away, but take some time to think. Absolutely. And that walking is a huge option. Yeah, I love that. Walking for me too. And then I had shared yesterday, these 7-minute workouts that are doing have been so helpful for me too. There's an app you can download that walks you through the 7 minutes of the different exercises you do. You do 12 exercises, 30 seconds per exercise. Barbara sharing in stressful times, I remember this is temporary, right? Yes. And Elizabeth is sharing, don't use text for things that require a phone call or face-to-face. Yeah, right, yes. I have done that too. There has been times when I could see an email conversation just going haywire, and I'll interject and say, let's talk on the phone. It has been easier to hear someone's voice because then I hear the truth. The words sometimes become assumptions that I make. And Marilyn is sharing, let me see if I can arrange a few things to help. And that lets them know you'll try, you're busy, the request is taken seriously, but you may not be able to help, right? Let me see if I can arrange a few things to help. Yeah, right. Yeah, everyone's truth can be different. So learning to be accepting and giving time is another comment from the chat room too. Everyone's truth can be different. And I think about that because everyone's truth is impacted by everything that happened before this moment. All of their experiences within family, within the systems, right? Because the truth about systems can be different depending on which system, which person within the system, and what the result of that interaction was like. So if you contact, for instance, a payer, you're connecting with one person, but maybe last week it was a different person and that experience was bad. So the truth is that you're feeling that you can't necessarily trust that system. That is your truth. And then the system is coming at you with what's not to trust. So it's facilitating that conversation around this is what happened last week. I just want to let you know going into this that I had this experience. I want to have a different experience with you. Tell me about the benefits or whatever it is that you're trying to figure out. Okay, so think about a recent difficult interaction that you have. When you consider that, how could you wow them now? What are the words that you would have used? What are the options that you would have considered? And what's the wisdom that you would have applied? What's so interesting about wisdom, too, is that it's wisdom about the person you're interacting with. So, Katie, you had shared that you have a wisdom about your mom's wounds. They can help in the interactions with your mom. So it's wisdom about the people that you encounter, the wisdom about the environment, the wisdom about the situation, and the wisdom about the systems. And this is why family caregivers are the experts who need to be presenters at conferences because they have this wisdom given the experiences that they've had. They have a wisdom about how things work and don't work. Okay, so think about a recent interaction, and when you have a chance, really just kind of reflect on that. And all the reflections do is give you an opportunity to be better in the next interaction. That's how we stay our best, thinking about what happened, what will I do differently, and then I'll be better in my next interaction. So Marilyn is sharing, I could have waited to respond and not been dragged into the conversation when we were both overly invested in being right. Oh my gosh, that is so true. And I have found when I get into that drama of I have to be right, I do much better if I sleep on it because then I wake up the next day, I'm like, who cares? But in that moment, I have to be right. Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that is so wise. That is so wise, Marilyn. Okay, so wow, you can wow them. Okay, so just a reminder that you have a gift from me, and that is my book that you can download on Kindle starting today. You can also pre-order my book, Healing Words, which is out May 3rd. I look at 12 caregiving fatigues and offer healing words around each of them. And then I wanted to mention too, that I'd love for you to save the date. So we just finished up a resilience project that we started in October, and we completed it with this conference. We're going to still continue to talk about resilience, but we're also going to move into a project around courage. So we're going to take the next 6 months or so and really focus in on our courageous acts. And then we're going to get together in October and talk about it. So I invite you to save the date, to think about a 25-minute workshop that you could present. and then to join us at caringourway.com so that you can receive updates and deadlines around the Courageous Project. Okay, so I love the comments that you're continuing to share in the chat room. Just a few more comments. So Terry's, oh my gosh, trying to stay in a place of compassion, which takes a lot with some, right? You want to stay compassionate, but there are some people you think, oh my gosh, I'm running out of compassion here. Right, absolutely. But our intent is to stay compassionate. I love that. And Katie is talking about getting too defensive and shutting down, right? Yeah, so that's our wisdom about ourselves and some interactions that we take it personally. It is hard to not take it personally, but to know it's not about me. And Felicia is writing to not respond and allow the situation to run its course rather than giving the energy of verbal confrontation. Right, don't apologize to a jerk, right? Yes, exactly. Okay, so this was awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I gained so much from the wisdom that you share. So I thank all of you for sharing in the chat room. We're going to take a 10-minute break and then we're going to come back to Raina, who's our next presenter. So grab some water, grab the rest of your breakfast if you haven't eaten, and I'll see you back here at top of the hour.